got Tony Isgrove from Tony Isgrove Paint and Decorating in Sydney joining us on the Q&A Renovation Show today. Tony, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Phil. It's a pleasure, and thanks for inviting me.
Well, we invite you because for a few reasons, which I'll go to in the end, because we know you're one of our monster pros. But your business is very well known in Sydney, which is the biggest city in the market in the country, and you've been in this game for quite a while. So, Tony, I might just get you to give us a bit of a briefing for our followers to hear about how you got into the painting industry and basically how long you've been in there for, and what Tony Isgrove Paint and Decorating actually specialise in.
Okay, so that might give away my age if I tell you how long.
That's all right. Age is actually well respected in this program because we know you're more experienced.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, probably started painting when I was about 5. Actually, my dad was a painter, and so I started out with him, and just doing stuff on weekends and more school holidays when I was 10, 11, 12. And went working with my uncle, who was also a painter, when I left school, which was about 16. So worked with my dad and my uncle for 3 or 4 years, and started out my own business when I was about 19. So
you've had your own painting business since you were 19.
Yeah, that's right.
Hence, I know why you're so well known in the Sydney market.
That's probably got something to do with it. Just been around for a while. It's a bit scary, actually, over 30 years. There you go.
So it's in your veins, it's in your DNA, painting. You've been doing it since you were 5. Your dad was a painter, your uncle was a painter. So I want to get into some of the specific questions that we get asked from monster customers and people that ring up our crew about their renovation. And paint always comes into, because people are told that if you are buying or particularly when you're selling, paint job is the best thing to do there. But at what stage of a renovation should painting be done? Because we see this is where a lot of people get it wrong, and we find then we're correcting them, or they're doing a clean-up phase. So when should the paint application be done?
Well, normally it is towards the end of the work, but there's a few kind of exceptions, I suppose. So if you've got some scaffold up and you don't want to keep that scaffold up, or there's, that's the only reason to keep it up would be for the painting. So good to get the painting done then. So you haven't got that cost of scaffold there, and you can finish that section. But pretty much when all the trades are out, apart from flooring, really. So before your timber floors are finished or before your carpet goes down is when the painters are there. And so there's no other trades around, so you haven't got dust issues, people getting in the way, touching wet paint, and all that type of thing.
And if you are, like, the various rooms in a home, because if people are renovating to sell versus renovating to live in the home, the rules change any differently then? Like in terms of I'm thinking with bathroom jobs where you want to get that one room sorted out.
It's normally whatever suits, kind of, if you're doing it yourself, whatever way you can work it out best. If you've got kids around, or you can do the bedrooms at one stage, or ideally, you'd go through and finish all your ceilings at once, then undercoat all your woodwork, go through and finish all your walls, and then finish off your woodwork. That would be the ideal way, but it's not always practical to do it that way. But painter's dream is kind of an empty house where you can get in there and do it like that. But if you're doing it yourself, especially if you're doing it on weekends, you're probably just more doing a room or 2 at a time, just to not turn the house upside down, really.
And you mentioned a bit about scaffold before. So do you, with the external works, obviously, would you do the external painting before you do the internal? Could you? Because it's not going to...
Yeah, that's right. So ideally, if you're doing internal and external, just working with the weather. So if we have a job where we're doing internal, external painting, we always try to ask the client if we can do the external first, and if it does rain, we can come inside. So and depending on the time of year and where you are in Australia too, if you get your colder kind of weather, frosty weather, you can't do a lot of painting early in the morning or or in the afternoon, so it has to be during the middle of the day.
But from a renovation side of things, if they're doing it themselves, they should still approach it the same way as a professional painter would do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, if it's winter, just it's more during the middle of the day, especially I suppose in Adelaide, Melbourne, where you get colder. And in summer you want to try and just work in the shade, try and avoid those hot days because the paint's just going to go off way too fast for you. You know, anything above 25 degrees working, it's going to go off pretty quickly. So, not that you can't work when it's warmer, but just definitely working in the shade would help.
Tony, we get asked a lot about people wanting advice, particularly from our decorators, wanting to know about paint trends and colours. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing in the market happening at the moment with colours and the trends of paint used internally, externally? We've seen a lot of people ask us about our Scandinavian look with our colour wash ranges that Monster have, but you know, what are you seeing from a professional point of view?
So I suppose externally, people are kind of working towards palettes around ColourBond colours and still using a lot of ColourBond colours. They change ColourBond change their colours, or sometimes just the name of their colours every year. But that's kind of a popular range to start with, and like the greys are pretty popular externally.
Right.
And internally, it's got still a lot of white, light colours. If you want to look at like a Dulux, it's probably like quarter lexicon, half lexicon, or steel, probably natural white or antique white USA. There's a few varies on that, but you probably find they're the most popular. White it's kind of a nice clean kind of look at the moment, with like a charcoal carpet, something like that.
So using furnishings to bring up other colours, but going with white paint or white derivatives.
So if you're doing up your house, especially if you're doing it to sell, that's going to give it a really nice fresh look. So that would be the advice for that type of situation.
So your recommendation for renovators is to stick with whites?
Definitely. So if I was doing a house up to sell, I would stick to that half or quarter lexicon, and just it's just a really nice fresh look. People are going to go in there and just give it that wow factor with some great furnishings and a darker carpet.
And what about things like kitchen areas and wet areas like bathrooms, laundries? Do you go with almost like a really bright white like the ceiling, or do you still go with those neutrals or off whites for those areas?
Again, just keep it the same colour pretty much all the way through. So again, white, like pretty white. Quarter lexicon is pretty basically
really light.
It's white with a drop of black in it. So if you go to full strength lexicon, it gives it a little bit of a grey look. So that would be maybe something that you could look at in different rooms. Still the odd feature wall hanging in there. So or maybe even a wallpaper feature wall is nice too. So
And in terms of the sheen, because that's the other thing that we see people, they paint and then they regret what they've selected. They've gone with a semi-gloss or a full gloss or even a matte when they should have gone somewhere else. From your end, for renovators, because you know, what's the safest and the best method for them to go with, or how do they judge which sheen they should select? Doing that paint job.
So normally a flat for a ceiling, and for a bathroom it would be a low sheen ceiling and walls, or semi-gloss ceiling and walls, and then throughout the house would just be a low sheen, like a washable low sheen. Obviously, especially if you've got kids. So which a lot of renovators do. Just to keep it a good, something that's washable and serviceable, and it still looks fine. If you go semi-gloss on the walls, it starts to look a bit shiny. So that would be pretty much, and woodwork, either a gloss or a semi-gloss. Just depends. If a gloss can look quite good. So just on that, you have to be careful if you're using a white timber, going white with your timber work and white with your walls, that you really go with an aqua enamel or acrylic enamel, because otherwise you more than likely get a problem with that yellowing. And with you're really going to notice it if you've got a white wall and a white woodwork. Where if you had a colour on the wall, you're not going to notice that as much. And the paint can go yellow quite quickly, just depending.
And that yellowing is caused by the timber.
Yeah, well, just by the atmosphere, a lot of it, and even by the way the paint's drying. While if you've got that ammonia from the wall paint or the ceiling paint, if you're doing that at the same time, we had a job recently where the client actually wanted enamel. We probably do 50% enamel, 50% water-based enamel, and he had like a half lexicon or a core lexicon, and it yellowed in 3 months. We went back there and you could really see that woodwork change colour. So that was a bit scary. So that's a good little tip, because you don't want to spend all your weekends painting your house and slowly see the woodwork turn yellow.
Yeah, exactly. Because with timber, so it's not a matter of undercoating timber to prevent that.
No, there's nothing. You can. The only way of preventing it is to use a water-based enamel. If you use a traditional oil-based enamel, there is a chance that it will yellow. And it doesn't always happen. It's where it's a little bit darker in some rooms, it will happen more. But yeah, can be a bit scary actually, seeing that after.
We've seen that in our coatings with yellowing before, and it is scary. But that brings me to my question about, you mentioned a water-based enamel, and people are looking for environmentally friendly, more eco-friendly, safer products to use in the home because of the way different VOCs and chemicals are emitted.
Yep.
So a water-based enamel is safer to use than a solvent-based enamel.
Yeah.
But is there a difference you're seeing these days, Tony, with the quality of paints? Now, are we getting a water-based enamel that's as good as a solvent-based enamel in what it can do in performance?
Pretty much, Phil. Yeah, you are, and you're right, because it's taken quite a few years to get that product better. I would always normally recommend internally anyway a semi-gloss enamel, just for the wearability and washability of it, and also you always used to get a lot more brush marks out of the water-based enamels. Yeah. So they're slowly. I mean, it's always being improved. Paint companies are always coming up with this new improved products, especially in that type of market.
Because I think what you said. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, in America, I don't even know if they're using oil-based enamels anymore. They're pretty much kind of phased out.
Yeah, they're trying to phase them out. Now, what I was going to say is, what you mentioned before is exactly what we see, is that people, they've had an experience from a previous renovation. I remember doing up a house years ago when I first moved in, and used the solvent-based enamel around all the woodwork, all the timber works, the architraves and skirtings. And the fumes and my eyes were watering. It was a terrible experience. Exactly. And then I tried a water-based enamel back then, but this is going back sort of 23, 24 years ago. And then it was exactly what you said, that it was chalk and cheese with the quality. And so if you keep that in mind, that it's always like that. And you mentioned now paint companies have improved the qualities of water-based enamel. So there is a safer alternative that you can still get the desired finish.
That's
that
right.
Professionals like you are using.
Exactly. And it's a matter of having a bit of a play with it, I suppose, just to get it right before you attack a door or something. Because if you haven't had much experience painting, a door can be pretty scary if you get that aquenamel straight out and try and slap it on the door. It can look pretty scary at times. So just probably start off practicing with some smaller areas like door frames, and maybe start off at the back of the door where you're not going to see it.
Look, I often tell people to just get an off-cut piece of timber somewhere and just paint that first, just to get the feel and the finish, so you know what you're working with, and then go on the real surface, especially if you're a renovator. But if painters are still doing that, that's good advice. Which brings me to my next question, Tony. Like, what are the tips that you can give to people? Like, where do people go wrong most, and what are some of the best tips you think you can give to a renovator when they are painting?
So probably one of the most obvious things is get your prep done first. I suppose most people hear that, you always got to get your prep right, which is true. just sanding, sealing the walls, sanding everything down, filling, making sure everything's filled, washing it. Not everything needs to be washed, but if you see there's grime or dust or dirt, obviously things have to be washed externally. Quite often a water blast or a soft wash using bleach, sugar soap, that type of thing.
So surface, I mean, we tell people all the time, there's three things you got to remember before you start painting: surface preparation, surface preparation, surface preparation. Because if you get that right, the job flows on from there.
Exactly.
More often than not. But with that, then how important is it? Because there are some paints out in the market that are marketed to the renovator or the DIY that say no priming required, or a 3-in-1 prep and prime.
Yeah.
What is your take on that? Do you always recommend they should be priming on a surface?
Depends. Like, if it's a new surface, yes, definitely. But if the paint is recommended and they say no primer required, as long as it's prepared properly and probably sanded properly, there shouldn't be an issue. If you don't sand it properly, especially if you've got a door or something like that, you might have seen it before where it just starts easily just scratching off. Most of the time it could be because it wasn't undercoated, but more likely than not, it just wasn't prepared properly. It wasn't sanded properly. They might have just not sanded enough, And we do get that issue from time to time. But if we've had someone who hasn't sanded the door properly, and we have to go back and then fix it because of that reason. So even the professionals get it wrong.
Yep, and that's always good to know, because the professionals get it wrong and they're honest about it. It tells you how much that you need to pay attention to that. But in terms of people getting things wrong and what they need to avoid those errors, do they need to, what sort of planning should go into a paint job? Because I know a lot of people just buy it, put the drop sheets down and just put the roller in and start going for it. Because one of the things I see a lot in the renovation market, people they've invested into older homes, and sometimes there's a paint surface that's on a wall, and they want to know whether they can paint over it or not. Do they need to remove it? Now, removing paint can be, as you know, dangerous, particularly old homes in the 60s and 70s because of lead paint.
Right. Exactly.
And if you start removing that, you've got another hazard that you can create for the family and in the home.
Exactly.
So what's your take on things like those lead testers, lead paint testers, to see if you've got lead paint, and when can you go over an existing paint, or when should you remove it?
So if you have got an older house built before the mid-70s, and you are going to be, you can see the paint's kind of been peeling, especially, and you're going to be doing a lot of sanding, it's definitely worth getting one of those home lead test kits. And even if you're unsure, if you do get a positive reading, you're still unsure, you can take it to a lab. There's hopefully one, I'm sure you could Google something near you, because exactly as you say, you don't want to start sanding and fill the house and the garden with lead dust, and that can be very expensive and costly and very unhealthy exercise, as you can imagine. So if you are, there's plenty of stuff on the internet to find out about that as well if you're unsure. And if I'm sure you can answer the questions through your website too.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of if you've got a painted surface, how do I know if it's okay for me to go over it instead of having to remove the paint? If the paint feels like it's well bonded, it's in stable condition, but I just want to change the colour. I'm talking more about those older homes, like those really shiny enamels, not so much an acrylic that you get on a plasterboard wall, but those shiny enamel paints. Sometimes you find them in those old bungalows, even outside on the old brickwork. How do I know if I need to sand and remove? Is there a basic test I could do as a DIY or a renovator to know that this is okay to go on?
Yeah, probably that's where you probably would have to maybe do a test. If it's old enamel, as you say, really shiny, you're really best to give it a good oil-based undercoat, and then do your acrylic top coat over that, because chances are it's just going to scratch off. You know what I mean? So so that would be. I mean, and you can test if it's enamel or not by just rubbing it with some methylated spirits, and if it comes off, then
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I get a bit of methylated spirits and rub it with a wiper, and I get a residue of the paint, then I know it's going to break down to solvent.
That's right. Yeah. But yeah, if it is an old house, I would anyway undercoat it first before you go over it with the traditional acrylic wall paint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony, we get asked a lot about professional painters and wanting to know, because, a lot of renovators are still not doing all the work themselves. They are outsourcing it. People are busy these days. They've got, lifestyles that are just rapid with family and career commitments.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are looking for a painter, all painters should have a license?
Well, not necessarily.
I know, but in your opinion, should you be looking for a painter with a license?
Depends which state you're in, Phil, because I know in Victoria you don't have to have a license. Do you have to have a license in South Australia?
Yeah, I think you're meant to be one of the master painters and have a trade license.
Okay, yeah, but in Victoria, painters don't need they don't have to be licensed.
Right.
So, and they were trying to take licensing out of New South Wales too. So
how do you know if you've got a professional painter or someone that looks like a professional painter?
Ideally, I think you get someone who was recommended to you, or if not, if they weren't recommended, ask for some references, and hopefully they're good references. Because you don't want to, spend all that money and have the hassle of getting the job fixed or the dramas of going through that process even, you know what I mean? You really want, if you're going to not have the time to do it yourself and you want your weekends freed up, and you get someone, or there's accredited painters out there, the various brands have accredited painters. So you could probably look up one of those and pretty much guarantee that they're going to be one of the better painters around, more professional. And that's going to save you a lot of headaches in the long run. And they may be a bit more expensive, but at the end of the day, it's going to be definitely worth it.
You get what you pay for.
Most of the time you do, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I'm thinking of an experience. We had a customer last year that bought some monster paints, and they had a painter, a so-called painter, that went out on site to do this work. Started having issues with the paint peeling off. We sent someone out to go and have a look at it for them, and then we actually found that this guy was Googling solutions on how to actually work out what he was going over. So although he claimed to be a painter, it was exactly that. Wasn't really a painter, a licensed painter. And so they spent a lot more money on that and days wasted. Instead of doing because besides researching the type of paint you want to buy, you've got to research the painter that you're using.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Social media comes into that, is handy for that, like checking out people's Instagram and Facebook pages to see whether they've got a portfolio of works they're showing. Is that something you suggest as well?
That's not a lot of professional painters. They don't really worry about that type of thing. I suppose if they've got some good Google reviews, that's probably a good thing. But yeah, I think just like anything, just do a bit of research. If you're getting your house built, you want a decent builder too, so you go into it. You just don't want those nightmares at the end of the day, do you? And
no, like you said, a recommendation is always something that someone's used someone before.
Yeah, and you want it to last. So if you're paying that money, you don't want to see it 6 months that it's all peeling off the walls, and then you're trying to get the painter back. If he's a reputable painter, maybe it wouldn't happen in the first place, but otherwise, you've got a guarantee, and he'll come back and fix it. And then, especially if he's licensed, if you have issues, you can go down that path as well.
Should you ask for a guarantee? Should a renovator ask for a guarantee from their painter?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And what sort of period would they get with that, Tony?
We guarantee like anywhere between 5 and 7 years.
Right.
So 5's pretty average.
And that's the workmanship, and then the paint that you use, you'd expect to last that long as well, obviously.
Yeah, just depending where it is, but at least 7 years, 7 to 10 years. And just depending on the conditions, yeah, it can last a lot longer too.
I'm going to hold the last couple of questions on the two areas of the home that we get flooded with questions, and people are always asking because they're where the value is in a renovation, and that's the kitchen and the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you attack differently in those areas when you are painting, either the selection of paints, the colours of paints, the type of paints? What sort of thought process can you hand on that one?
I'm trying to think of something really interesting to say to you.
Well, I mean, there's this big push on mold-resistant paints in those
Yes.
wet areas. How much value is there? Because there's those big brands like Dulux, and there's a couple others out there that you're paying a premium for the additional quality of mold-resistant paint.
Yeah.
I mean, from Monster Paints, we actually just do it across all our paints that we have that inhibitor in there. But how important is it from you as a painter, from what you've seen with jobs you've gone to repair or fix, where you would think, hey, if they used the mold-resistant paint here, this wouldn't have happened?
Yeah. So obviously, as you guys, as you say, all of your paint has mold inhibitors in it, which is really important. And it really does work. We did this job a few years ago now, and it wasn't a bathroom. It was like the bedrooms and the hallway. And before we went there, like, it was actually black. Like, there was that much mold everywhere, and they had it painted a few years beforehand, and the mold just come back. And we used mold inhibitors in the paint, and I think we went back to do some more work like 3 or 4 years after that, and it was perfect still. So it's definitely worth a premium product that does have those qualities. Yeah. And
mold is now. Sorry, go on.
And it depends on the conditions, obviously. So if you've got a lot of good ventilation, and depending on where you are in Australia or the world for that matter, different conditions, different areas of different cities even can make a difference. So yeah, that's something.
I mean, mold now is seen by many specialists as a real health hazard and health issue, and it's becoming more of a light, behind health problems, but for children, respiratory issues for the elderly, asthma, all sorts of skin issues. So it's one that I think people need to be aware of, and and understand that investing in that better paint to prevent mold is worthwhile. And even if you're renovating with the intention to sell, knowing you're passing on something that's going to be of value to someone else.
Exactly. And, like, it's obviously, as you say, it's a real health issue for your family. And if you're selling your house, and I can really smell mold when I go into a house or dampness. That's something that, and people are definitely aware of if they're going to buy a house and going, wow, this is, you want to get that right, don't you? Because that's going to feel it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's going to scare them off straight away. Yeah.
Hey Tony, look, it's been great to have you on the Reno Q&A show. You've been, you are one of our Monster Pros, which means anyone who subscribes or gets onto the go-to, they get to have you as a one-on-one to offer advice. So if anyone's watching, you've got this person here who's highly experienced. As he said, he's been painting since he was 5 years old. So you're not going to get a more experienced painter than that.
25 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, you don't look much older than 40, mate. But the fact is that your business, Tony, you do a lot of strata title buildings, and you do all sorts of painting in the Sydney area.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. But
so if people want to find you, if they want to find your business,
they can Google Tony Isgrove, and I'm sure they'll find something. But always love giving that advice. So anyone who wants some advice, just get in touch, and happy to help. Love it.
Yep, and like many of our Monster Pros, Tony is one of the friendliest guys you're going to meet. So it's worthwhile. You get a lot of knowledge, and I'm sure there's a lot of gems you've shared with us on this episode of the Reno Q&A. Tony, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on the show, Phil. I've loved every minute.
And we'll try and get one done in the future where we can sit together on a couch and go over a specific paint topic.
Sounds great. Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.